I have an unrelated question.
Oh, I can't believe an unrelated question.
About the ACA. I know.
It's NASCAR
Yeah,
Day.
I know. I don't want to put a damper on fun, but I did want to ask you, the Navigator rules take effect at the end of this month, and some of the consumer advocates are concerned that because that law ties Navigators to federal funding, that there might not be enough Navigators to explain, anything about the exchanges. Is that something that your office is aware of or monitoring, or do you think that the law will allow there to be enough Navigators?
Well, first of all, from the Department of Insurance's perspective, and then obviously Barbara can talk about from a legislative perspective as the sponsor of the legislation. We were concerned about making sure consumers are protected. If you sell insurance in Ohio today as an agent or a broker, you have to be licensed. You have to have appropriate continuing education so that you're informed about the products. And you also have to have a background check. So working within the confines of the federal statute, we wanted to provide similar protections, not go so far as licensing, of course, but to provide certification, continuing education, and make sure that there is proper recourse if we have a consumer issue. So from our perspective, consumer protection was our highest priority.
But do you take issue with that? Do you think that the law will limit then, who will be able to do this, in the sense that what they're predicting is if it's tied to the federal funding, which is $2.3 million, that would allow for maybe 60 to 70 Navigators.
Right.
They're like, there's 88 counties in the state, so how would this affect how consumers?
I think that you need to, I certainly agree with everything that Lieutenant Governor just said, but I certainly think that the federal government took the time in the effort to determine the number of the uninsured, how many dollars they were willing to put forth towards that process, and they set up what they felt was sufficient a dollar amount to go into the states to set this up. I think we're holding them to that commitment. We're also being very respectful of the healthcare freedom vote that was taken, that 66% of our Ohioans said this is not something that we are motivated to really want to pursue, nor to put our state dollars into. And so as you're looking at the exchange, I think it's an appropriate balance of respecting the wish of Ohioans on the dollars that we're putting into it, and respecting the math that the federal government did in determining how much money was needed.
What do you think should happen on Medicaid expansion?
Well, as you know, the governor has been very vocal. I believe had a rally here yesterday in Columbus. From the governor's perspective, he's going to continue to push on and ultimately get this done for Ohioans, the working poor in Ohio, and I support the governor.
Back on the ACA, by the end of the month, ODI is supposed to have gone through all of the exchange plans and submit them to the federal government. And last time we spoke, you had gone through around, I think there was like 200 plans had been submitted from 14 different companies. Have you received more plans in that time period, or how's work coming along on those?
We received 14 companies filed 214 plans. That number has not changed. We have not accepted or taken other plans since the end of May, and primarily for the reason that we would not be able to get through the volume of work that's necessary to make sure that the rates are adequate, to make sure that they're actuarially sound, and to make sure they are not discriminatory, which is what our law in Ohio requires us to do. So for us, it's really a time issue of just being able to do the work necessary on those plans. So those numbers haven't changed.
And how much work is left for you guys? Would you say you're around,
We'll finish. It's really hard to give you a percentage,
right.
But we expect to be done so that the plans can be turned over by July 31st.
And have the numbers at all changed on what you're expecting them to average around in terms of costs? Or
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Have other states taken, in terms of the Navigator legislation, have other states taken this approach? One of the criticisms here is that it goes beyond what the federal law has been put in place, and therefore limits who is going to be able to basically help consumers get on to the exchange. Do you guys see it that way, or how would you react to that criticism?
I would react by saying, no, I don't think we're unduly limiting the number of people that are going to help folks get on the exchange. I think we're appropriately protecting Ohioans from making sure that we have good folks that are trained in knowing how to help them navigate through that system and I think we're doing it in a very appropriate way. In fact, some of our parts of our legislation that we've passed here in Ohio and some of our rules are being used as a model for other states to adopt, because we have found a balance in how do we both protect consumers, which is our job, and how do we make sure that the information gets out there.
But do you have a sense of how many Navigators? I mean, is their number somewhat accurate, the 70? Do you think it'll be more? Do you think it'll be less?
I don't know what that number turns out to be. I think that's their responsibility. It's our responsibility to provide a platform for which they can work from.
But it would be whatever the 2.3 million allows.
Correct.
Yeah, and I don't think we have any sense yet of exactly how many there will be.
And the additional funding
Last
comes out in August for that the federal government named?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it is. I think it is mid to end August, so that because on the idea that they are supposed to start the process of getting the certification
Right.
going and the education, so that they are up and running by October 1. So those dollars come out so they can begin the promotional information and the education process.
Okay. Thank